Hello, everyone, and welcome to A Bigger Bite, where we take a deeper dive into some of the biggest films of the year. Once again, I am Matt, and joining me today, we have this lovely panel of Bitesize founder Nick, Adriano, and Amanda from Candid Cinema. How is everyone doing tonight?
Betrayed.
Cold. Oh. The fact that we answered differently at the same time is very telling right now.
Wow.
Sorry. Just for context, Adriano was my boyfriend. And he had no idea that I was going to be on this podcast this evening because I, for one, do not like the movie that we are discussing, and he loves the movie that we are discussing. Just
And
for
we
context.
discussed this many times.
So many times
He
since
seems
September.
annoyed already. This is going to be great. Nick, how are you doing, sir?
I'm so happy. I'm looking forward to this conversation so much. Adriana, we won't pile on you.
We won't.
Though we are differing on our opinions of this film, I think we all have aspects that we enjoy about it, and we will make sure not to let those fall by the wayside.
Good.
Yeah, no, this will be a fun overall episode, I think. Episodes with debate are always good, as if it's out already, the Nickel Boys with myself, Shaq, and Amaru is a perfect example of how these episodes can be so fun. But if it's not out already, you got a treat episode coming for you. Anyways, we're going to go around and give our first thoughts or our thoughts on the film. And we're going to go with the people who, aren't as big of fans of it first. So we're going to start with ladies first. Amanda, why don't you tell us all what we think of The Brutalist? Or what you think?
So, again, for context, I had watched this at TIFF. The night before, I went to the Midnight Madness screening of The Substance, which was 2 hours and I think 35 or 45 minutes. And then I chose to watch the press screening of The Brutalist at 8:45 the next morning.
Oof.
These were choices that were made, my friends. So that was that. But I remember being impressed with the direction by Brady Corbet. Corbet, apologies, Adriano, I'm so sorry. By Brady Corbet. I love the first half of this thing. I was hooked. I was in. I think Guy Pearce gave an incredible performance. Adrian Brody also gave an incredible performance. Loved the dynamic between the two of them and really enjoyed their conversations. Then after intermission, the second half just took a dive for me. I didn't really respect certain choices that were made. I think it was a bit too, I guess, like on the nose with the messaging of how Americans tend to, screw over immigrants and, the deconstruction of the American dream and all of that. I think it was a bit too vulgar for my liking. I just preferred it mainly at the surface and the banter. I value the conversations. I thought the dialogue was really rich in that case, but the second half is just where it fell apart for me, and I just didn't, buy into what he was trying to do there.
Nick, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm really in the same boat. I was enjoying it until the intermission, and then it turned into a family drama, one featuring a family I didn't care about. And that's not to take anything away from the performances, but I was very into this idea of an artist who wouldn't compromise their vision. He would make it a point to really push for like the higher ceilings and things like that, because he knew what he wanted it to be. Money didn't matter. It was, this is what I want it to be, and I want this to be the best version of my creation that it can be. And I thought that was really good. And I thought Adrian Brody's character and everything with Guy Pearce was really good. And then when they brought the family over, it became like other movies I've seen before, but in a less interesting manner. And I was just kind of watching the second half, yearning for what I was getting in the first half. Because though I get that they're talking about the immigrant experience, to me, it's the American dream story of the single man, we'll call him at the time, because his partner is off and away overseas. That was interesting to me. And when you brought the family over and he wasn't wanting in the same way anymore. It lost a lot of its edge for me, and it kind of devolved not into a soap opera, but into losing what was making the opening half special.
Adriano, you now have the floor to wax poetic, as we all expect you to do.
I think this movie is just spectacular. Like, I was able to watch this movie on print at the North American premiere at TIFF, and that something about that print just gave this movie another layer of excellency. I mean, look, we all agree that the first act is pretty spectacular. Like, watching this, in my opinion, the guy who's going to be iconic, Mr. Laszlo Toth, watching his almost naivete take place. Off this lie he was fed about the American dream. And then the intermission happens, and this is where we do start to disagree. I definitely agree Act 1 is better. Don't get it twisted. I do think Act 2 dives into some stuff that is very interesting, like how he's being almost like intoxicated by this idea that the dream has to be real. It has to be like, I'm definitely not being taken advantage of. I'm definitely not like losing control of both myself and, my artistic vision and stuff like that. I do think his interactions with Elizabeth do, complement this idea that I'm talking about. I do get why people are put off by a certain decision that happens in the second. I do get it. I do understand why people are put off by it. Do not get it twisted. But I do think it works for what Courbet is going for, and the ending. Again, another thing I've seen some people criticize, I do think it definitely hits home. That finale, that final note that Zofia leaves us with, while old Laszlo Toth is, kind of becoming an epoch in and of himself.
As the person who's probably seen this film most recently, I'm honestly in between the two parties here. Full transparency, saw this film 4 days ago at this point. I thought it was really strong in the first half. I definitely do have certain issues like the one that Adriano was talking about. These two had, like, I know what issue there. Yes, I definitely agree with these two more than I do Adriano on that point. But I think Nick nailed it on the head, where it becomes more of a family drama. And I found myself, considering I watched it in the comfort of a home theater, like an actual home theater, which is awesome. And I still got the theatrical experience. I found myself actually like diving for my phone, since I had the ability to do that, because I was like, it's kind of not keeping my attention here. And I typically don't do that for films. I think I was messaging Nick during it and like, yep, watching this, it's interesting. But overall, I do have personal issues with the film that I won't dive into at this point in time, as I've promised not to. But it's still a very solid, well-made film. I think the first half of it is absolutely brilliant, and it is bogged down by the second half.
Well, yeah, and I'll say to what you're alluding to, which is the AI issues. I think to do any film right now justice, you need to talk to it aside from that, and then afterwards you can look at these after effects that you had, because the experience that we all had when watching it, except for you, Matt, was without any of this controversy, just as a film on its own. And
I will say this, as a critic, I left the controversy at the door while watching the film.
But it was still, and like, I'm not even, there's nothing negative about it, but it was still something that was mentioned. If you watch Late Night with the Devil, you're looking for those AI things after the fact because you've heard about them.
I can also say this. I did not tell the person I watched it with about any of the AI issues until we were done with the film, because I wanted to be able to bounce their thoughts off the film off of them. It's my buddy Mike, really amazing guy, and he is big A24 guy. And so when we had the ability to watch this, we jumped on it, and just throwing out just talking with him. Let's just dive into the elephant in the room, the Laszlo rape scene.
Okay, here's my big thing. There are 2 notable 2024 films with a sexual assault scene.
Yes.
They are The Brutalist and The Apprentice. Taking
Yep.
out whatever you think about Donald Trump the person. In that movie, that made sense for the character. In this movie,
Makes no
I
sense.
did not find it made sense for the character. They used it as an example to show how he would use his power, but there's nothing that shows within the film that he is Guy Pearce's character is anything more than arrogant to his power, and it didn't feel like something that I would have had him do. It's actually something I felt his son would be more likely to do, but
which
Guy
I'm glad
Pearce's
that he did.
It's
but Guy
implied that he
Pearce's
did.
character himself,
Hmm.
it didn't make sense to me that he did it. Where, like I said, The Apprentice is like the great antithesis where in that
Yeah.
movie, seeing Donald Trump do that makes total sense within the character that Sebastian Stan is portraying at that time.
Yeah.
I didn't think it added anything having Guy Pearce do it. I think it unnecessarily turned a lot of people off in a second act that a lot of people were not soured on, but
Having issues with.
less interested in.
It just
So I
took
don't
me
think
out entirely.
Yeah,
Like
I don't think
I
it
didn't
adds
even
anything.
care. No, I didn't even care what happened after that because I'm like, yeah, I'm already checked out, unfortunately, which sucks. But like,
I will
my
say
feeling with
that
it.
is around the time where I started being like, I'm gonna go on my phone because like this is just.
It just bothered me so much.
Yeah, on my first viewing, it definitely was just like, whoa, like what?
Yeah.
Why did that happen? But on subsequent viewings, a lot of Guy Pearce's character, Harrison's like arrogant, kind of becomes down as more ignorance and just complete lack of like a whole lot of delusion of grandeur in a lot of what he says, like, you know, and it became less out of nowhere. Let's put it like that. Like, it's still a big shock moment, but subsequent viewings kind of made it feel less like you do kind of feel like in Harrison's fucked up mind, he thinks that Laszlo quote unquote deserved it. You know, the way things he's saying when he's doing it, you know, it's like it's so off-putting, obviously, but you know, it makes sense to me on subsequent viewings. Even if, yeah, I will admit, my first viewing, I was like, ooh, was that called for? Perhaps? I mean, obviously, it's never called for, but like on a story narrative, you know, context, you know, I did see purpose for it, especially with what Laszlo did after, you know, how Laszlo devolves afterwards.
I think it's an important. Honestly, it's arrogant to say this is how I would make this movie better. This very well directed move by Brady Corbet, but just have someone else at the party do it. He still gets to devolve. He still gets it to affect them this way. He gets to have the revelation. I was sexually assaulted while I was at this party somewhere that I was taken, and maybe I got too drunk because I was with Guy Pearce's character. It's just one of the things that really takes me out of a movie is when I see a character do something, and it's not that they do something that's malicious or something that's evil. It's when they do something that doesn't stand in line with everything else they've shown the character to be. And I think there's a sense of arrogance, but I don't, like I said, if it was the son that did that to him,
would have made more sense.
I get it. But
yeah,
sorry?
I said it would have made more sense because we'd seen him fuck so many people over already leading up to that. Like Harrison,
and
it's been alluded to throughout the point.
He's
but
kind of
never
slimy.
Seen him do that. Right.
He's kind of slimy, the son. And there's kind of a regalness to Guy Pearce's character where I almost feel like like he would view that as beneath him.
Yes.
If it makes sense.
I would make the argument more that Harry, because, you know, a lot through the movie, especially in the second act when like Harry starts growing the mustache.
Harry's Joe Alwyn, by the way.
Joel Alwyn, yes. A lot of what he is doing is more just like an amalgamation of his father especially in contrast to his sister, who is like almost the polar, whose like niceness is sincere, whereas Harry and Harrison's niceness is just pure like fallacy. Even in his most sincere scenes, I do think, because it does allude to the idea that Harry assaulted Sophia. I do think that is an amalgamation of his father's actions. The fact that one Elizabeth exposes him in front of the family towards the end, Maggie, the sister, just instantly believes her, whereas Harry snaps and Harrison just freezes, is telling.
Can I say the only reason I feel like that's even a thing is because the sister, being a woman at that time, is a minority. Like that was exactly where my mind went to. I'm like, oh, she's right on board, ready to believe. So this is just knowing that what reason does she have to lie? And
right, yeah,
and,
I really appreciate that character in subsequent viewings for how small the role she played. I do think that like Brady Corbet adding a very sincere member of that family was a very interesting touch.
Yes.
I also just want to add something about like Felicity Jones's performance in general, where like if that specific scene didn't happen, she wouldn't have had that big blowout with the family at all, which would have led to no Oscar nomination. So it's such a weird. I'm sorry,
she's right.
it's the
she's
truth.
absolutely
Like
right.
there was nothing that she did in the second.
That.
I don't know. I just feel like
there
the
is
placement of
nothing
that
she
is
does in
weird.
that
She doesn't
second
do
act
anything
besides that. She is.
I don't agree.
Like
I think some of the moments she has with Brody in the second half, like the scene in the bed together, like with the reuniting, I'm like, this is like.
But that's not Oscar worthy. That's a solid performance.
Yeah,
but it's.
That could be to me.
It's an every other day performance. I'm being honest, and this is as someone who just saw it. Like it's fresh in my mind. Outside of the blow up, there's nothing that I found memorable about her performance.
I was really into Felicity's performance even before that moment. Even though that's the scene, even the scene when she wakes up from the overdose at the hospital, the little conversation she has when she tells Laszlo that she's going to Jerusalem. It's like, this woman can act. I forgot the full, I can't remember last time I was like actually into a Felicity Jones performance. Somebody will come to mind, I'm sure, but like best performance of her in a while.
That is with what she had. Like if she didn't have the blowout, like having the blowout, I'm like, oh, okay, she's finally doing something in this film. But also I feel like they didn't know what to do in the second half with his wife coming, because it's like every bad thing that could possibly happen to him happens. Like the overdose was also so unnecessary in my eyes, because it's like, well, how much is going to even happen? I don't know. For me, it was like abuse, and like, it was just like I don't know. I can't even explain it because it was just so much, and it was bloated in the second half that I'm like, you don't know where to take this couple with this family.
And that moment so telegraphed also, because like you feel like he would have. Granted, he is taking heroin, and it's at a time when it's not really regulated. Yeah, but I'm getting to this point. It's at a time where it's not really as regulated, or it's less regulated than it is now, I guess, for lack of a better way. But like it's used as medicine back then, and he's still just it's when the first time I see him use it, once she's in the US, I'm like, oh, he's gonna use that on her at one point, isn't he? That my mind went directly to that. I'm like, okay, there's
he's a pro athlete abusing painkillers.
Yes.
That's kind of what it is at that point. It's not this terrible drug that devolves you into a massive drug addict. It is, I have this thing that I use to make me feel better, and I'm overdoing it. I'm overtaking it. But it's not viewed as like this death sentence that it would be in more of a modern day.
Yeah, which I think is I think that was on purpose from Corbet. But I do think, him starting to drug her was definitely a part of his disillusionment, like of grasping at straws at this basic lie he was told about America. And he started, I think him started to, lay it out on his own family is part of it, like important. And I think him having that like realization towards the end, and then him going to Jerusalem, it was important in my mind.
And that's totally fair, but it's going back to the pro athlete comparison. There's only so much you can do with it, and like he's clearly not, or we don't see him drink much, I should say, outside of like the party.
There's hints of alcohol.
Yes, there's hints, but the biggest hint I would say is when the son or when Harry calls him an alcoholic. I'm like, I mean, I don't know if it's personally. I was like, I don't know if it's alcoholism or if he's just showing up high as a kite to work, because that's what we were primarily seeing. Like you weren't showing both issues. I don't want to keep harping on the second act, but it's hard not to, because the first act is almost perfect.
I think the first act is perfect. I think just the mere scope of the first act, that first sequence the first overture.
It's phenomenal.
I did one of those. I did one of the lean forward things.
Same.
And just the fact that they filmed it in VistaVision was just
incredible.
gorgeous.
Incredible. It looks remarkable. Like
but
visually, wow.
I think we have
even
to
do the second act. Just wow.
I think we have to harp on the second act though, because
there
really are two complete stories.
They are
like you could watch them as two separate films, and if you were rating them, except for you, Adriano, if we were rating them as two separate films, I think we give a very high rating to Act 1.
Yes, we do.
And I think we give a middling to low rating to Act 2.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the thing that really hurts it for me is I remember how I felt watching Act 1. And when the intermission came and I was like, man, this is flying by. I'm really enjoying it.
Same.
Act 2 retroactively hurt Act 1 for me.
Yeah.
And that's the frustrating part. I liked where Laszlo's story was going. I liked the direction it was taking. And when they took it in this other direction, not only did they give me a less interesting story, they took away the conclusion of what they were building, that they were seemingly building towards. Now, that can come down to what I expected from the film, but I think that there's something there to that.
Nick, I want to add on to what you're just saying, because I have a saying when I do reviews or anything, and I tell people this in person all the time, that going back to it being two completely separate stories that are just put together in one day, each act is its own story. I always tell people the sign of a good sequel is that it improves on the original. If we're looking at it as two separate stories that just take place in the same film, that sequel just does not do a good job of being elevatory to the first film. You're right. It does bring it down 110%.
It's anti-Dune.
Yes.
Where Dune Part 2 makes Dune better.
Yeah.
Like, even if you love Dune, Dune Part 2 makes Dune better.
It's Top Gun.
Makes the first one worse.
Maverick, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Like I'll be honest. I hate the first Top Gun. I love Maverick, and it improved. Like I watched the original Top Gun after seeing Maverick, and I was like, I actually kind of vibe with this now.
Yeah.
I love both so much.
It was the exact opposite. I was like, can I just go back and watch the first act and call that a day? Like, and that be it?
I cannot get behind that it ruins the first act, but I do think, the first act ends optimistic on such an optimistic note.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like it would be a lie if it stayed with that tone. I think it would be unfair if it stayed optimistic, because it's not an optimistic film. The idea is not optimistic.
Adriano,
the last scene is like the last line is not optimistic at all. It's very clearly like bitter irony.
But I didn't need an optimistic story. I think you can tell
story.
You can tell the rest of that story and have his relationship with Harrison devolve.
Yeah.
Because the other thing that really makes me hate the sexual assault scene is the scene early in the film when Harrison goes out of his way to get photographs of the structures that he had built that were lost to him. And though this is what you did, there is almost like a sense of care in there. Like you put
Yes.
effort in to do that.
You're trying
and you
to
see
woo
his
them.
reaction. You see his reaction when Laszlo reacts to the photos.
Problem is, I don't think that was Harrison's intent in that scene. I think that was him admiring him for his artistic integrity and not for he doesn't see him as a human, basically.
I disagree. I'm more with Nick on this because at that point he was trying to woo Laszlo into taking this job that he's considering. Like he is trying to get to know Laszlo as a person to see if he's the kind of person he wants to do business with. Just based on
I do agree with that, but in terms of him giving him the photos, I didn't see this.
Can I finish?
Yeah, of course.
What they show of Harrison in the first act is someone who cares about a person's character, and for the most part, it doesn't. He tells the story of his relationship with his grandparents. He is made to see in that first act that he cares more about a person's character and where they stand on things. Doesn't matter if they have $1 to their name or $1 million. He cares about people, and that last act is just a complete 180 of what it seems like.
I would then say maybe I would say because I maybe I didn't fully see it on the first time. I would say even if you have to stop at the intermission, I would say watch that first act again, and a lot of his niceness comes off as fake. There's a lot of falseness in it, which I think was on purpose. I think that Harrison Van Buren is a guy who's benefited off of the American dream. He like the idea is that the American dream is only for the wealthy, and it's kind of the idea that Parasite, explored that the wealthy are nice because why wouldn't they be? But in reality, they're just they don't see these people as human. Even during that incredible conversation he's having about the grandparents, it kind of comes off as pretty dark when you see the first time you hear you're like, oh, what a loving son, but then you're like, this guy kind of screwed these people over, didn't he?
No, he didn't. I don't feel that way at all because he was making sure he himself wasn't being screwed over. That was the point of the story. He did that for his mother more than anything.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And ultimately, he saw that his mother was being taken advantage of. So why would he help these people? That is not him screwing them over. That was doing right by him and his mother.
I do see that, but again, I do think that story reveals a little bit of a falseness in his politeness more so than
I don't view that as falseness. I view that as showing who you are 110%.
I'm a little at odds with you on this, Matt, actually, in that where I did bring up the point that his reaction to the way Laszlo reacts to the photos and stuff does seem genuine. I don't think it seems disingenuous. Mm-hmm. To me, I view his what's the word I want to say? I view his high rating on the sense of character within a person almost like mafia style, where it's like, I'm going to get in bed with this person. I need to know who this person is. I need to know what they're about, and I'm not going to do business with someone that I wouldn't go have a beer with. Where it's less like him as this loving person. He cares about who Laszlo is as a person because he wants to know that he's quote unquote investing in good people. Mm-hmm. But I think that good people part is important. I think that there is a version of a relationship here that's also, I don't want to say a resentment of his son, but a missing part of the relationship he seems to have with his son that I think Laszlo does fit a little bit. And that's all those reasons I just listed are even more reasons why the sexual assault makes no sense to me.
But again, I don't, and I that's where I don't agree again. I think that the whole idea is Harrison doesn't really, he acknowledges Laszlo's genius for sure, but he sees him as, in other words, as an employee, as cattle to him. In Harrison's mind, he's just a brilliant guy who's going to work for him. So that when he asks why architecture, he's never asked him about the war. Every question about the war at the dinner table was from the lawyer. for example. He's never asked about the war. He's never asking him about, these, like, he never really asks about Elizabeth. It's never him talking about Elizabeth, for example. To me, Harrison only viewed Laszlo as one of his employees, aka not a human, which is part of this experience that Brady Corbet is trying to explore.
My pushback on that, at least from how I felt with the movie, at least in the first act, is I felt that Harrison respected him in the way that he listens to what he has to say and stuff. And this also is where it's kind of a juxtaposition to his own son, that I don't think he really respects his own son in the same sense. He looks at him more as like the spoon-fed kid that gets whatever he wants and doesn't respect it and doesn't know where he, all that kind of natural parent with a spoiled son kind of vibe. And I think he respects how Laszlo got to where he got. And I think he respects a lot of things through Laszlo as he's building this. And they definitely have their differences. And that relationship does start to devolve in the first act a little bit. There's definitely hints of it. But I think you could have kept telling that story with just these two. And also, great final scene. I didn't need Zofia at all. Zofia does nothing for me in this film except for the final. Like, we're talking about Felicity's big scene for the Oscar. Without Zofia having that last scene, which you literally could have done without her featuring in the movie at all. It's basically the end to the movie A League of Our Own, where the kid comes back and talks about the women, and it's like, oh, grandma, like, meet the thing. You don't need that connection threaded through. And what Zofia has to say at the end as just a relative that we didn't see throughout is the same thing, because, man, she added nothing for me in that second act.
She's just, considering she has, 3 or 4 lines in that second act, period, and the majority of them come at the dinner when she says she's moving to Jerusalem. I can't really argue against your point there.
I do see the point that, like, she could have been cut, but I also don't agree with that. I do think that Corbett is making a point about how, like, American, like, exceptionalism breeds Zionism, sadly. And I think it's there to explore that through Zofia. The fact that she's mute throughout the majority of the film. The fact that the first image we see is her talking to, I believe, Nazi guards. I thought
it was Russians.
I think it's implied that it was like she was in like a dangerous situation.
Well, no, because I guess because the film starts off with the reading of the letter that from Elizabeth.
So I'm talking about like the very first like thing we see before him waking up, and we hear Elizabeth's letter, like the very first shot.
I'm just saying, because she talks about these men taking a liking to Zofia. That's why I was saying I felt like that was just connected.
Maybe I missed that part, but like the fact that like we start with her.
Yeah, no, I'm again. This is just me watching it from the other day. She talks in the letter about Zofia and how they are safe and at this place, and these men have taken a liking to her, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. But no. I see Zofia's purpose in the film. I do see it. How she got to the position she was in, and how she got where she's at, and that led to the fact that it was her, doing the telling Laszlo's story, so to speak, at the Venice retrospective thing. I do think it all had purpose for her, even if I didn't think she had the most impact, although Corbett definitely saw a lot of use in her, and I am curious to dive deeper into her on another viewing, which I will definitely do.
I'm curious of your thoughts on Zofia, Amanda.
Yes, I was just about to say.
I'm gonna be honest, like, she was such a small character that I just didn't even remember her. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
No.
I also didn't care for that ending at all. Like, I don't know. I don't think that the women were like great in the film. Like,
they aren't
well written. I don't know. I just I don't want to keep saying things that are negative, but I don't know. I just don't think they were well written whatsoever for me to care enough about any of the women in this picture. Because the
Agreed.
focus really isn't even on them, obviously, but even with the small time that they did have, and they incorporated these women, it was like, well, they didn't have much to work with at all. It's kind of like an Emily Blunt and Oppenheimer type situation. So,
Yeah,
Yeah.
Felicity
I
is
thought it was
arguably a MacGuffin.
Yep.
I think there's a lot to airs about that. I think y'all are undervaluing personally.
sorry. Sorry.
We'll talk after this. All
I
right.
feel bad.
You would think that.
It's like Adriano like worked on the film or something. Like I feel like I'm hurting him.
Right.
It wasn't even his
I
favorite
know.
film last year.
I was about to say,
I
it's not
know,
even his
it's
favorite
big.
film, and he's treating it like it is.
I literally said
defending
that yesterday, which is so funny. I was like, it's fifth spot. What do you
Yeah, it was after.
I mean,
Yeah.
5 out of like 140. Like, it's pretty top. Yeah, I love you too, honey.
Relationships will be tested.
This movie's been testing it.
What
Yeah.
Adriano, I'll ask you. Aside from like we've talked about the cast and our differing opinions on the first and the second act. On the technical side, what really impressed you about this one?
Just the craft overall, like, kind of blew me away. Can't lie. I think Courbet knocked it out of the park. I think cinematography. When you talk about cinematography, I want to talk about that goddamn score. Those horns, man. That shit hits, especially in the theater. It's just that.
I hear that at least 4 to 5 times when I'm with him. I'm not even joking.
The most
This
important
is-
thing is,
this-
do you
this-
hear
this-
it like on his phone or
I was
him
about to say,
reenacting
He
it?
does that. He does.
Oh, I thought you were about to say he said it as like his text tone for when
Yeah.
he text
No. He just does that.
No, I can't.
Every
That's overwhelming. But
Is it-
Maybe not after this episode.
after how you've talked about this film since I've known you the last few weeks.
I gotta defend it. I'm on
It's
the
so
front lines,
funny.
man.
It's hilarious though. He does it at the best times for comedic timing, if that helps. That's why I just
that
laugh.
doesn't
at that point.
help.
It does to me.
Let's please talk positive for a bit. We've barely talked about the first act of this film.
To be fair, what we actually haven't talked about is Adrian Brody.
Yes.
Which we went to the supporting cast, but I think
Yeah.
one thing we all apparently we've offended Adriano to the point that he's just left the conversation.
He doesn't want to be so red on camera.
Yeah,
I'm so
he
sorry.
got so angry
Sorry,
that his
that's
tears
something.
started coming out. He didn't want us
He
to
was
see it.
turning
I respect
red.
it, honestly.
I had to deal with something real quick.
That dealing with something since he muted himself was just
And it was
screaming
my
and
anger.
cursing. It was screaming and cursing. He's just like,
Yeah.
"Fuck!"
I think the one thing that we're all positive on is Adrian Brody's performance.
Oh. God, what a performance!
For the most part,
Like generational performance, I think, in my opinion. Like,
And I
that's-
think whether or not I believe from what I've heard, we all have different opinions for who we would give Best Actor to at the Oscars this year. I think, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
But I think we all
biting my
agree that
tongue.
I think we all agree that his performance is worthy of being there.
Yeah.
totally.
Definitely. Yeah.
I can't get into this because of what I agreed not to talk to. Let's just say AI has disqualified Matt Thomas from this conversation.
Who is your best? Well, here we'll just go through it right then. Who is your best actor if you had to pick, Matt?
Right now, if I had to pick my best actor, hold on, I have the list right in front of me. Honestly, because I still haven't seen The Apprentice yet, my top two would be Coleman Domingo and Timothy Chalamet.
And Amanda,
Coleman
you
Domingo's
said
great.
on a previous or a future episode, depending on when this airs, that you had Chalamet and Ray Fiennes, right?
Yeah. Those are my two. And I
have
would have Coleman Domingo too. I'm not gonna
I have Sebastian Stan as my undisputed number one.
I see. I haven't seen An Apprentice yet. That's the only reason I
He is breathtaking.
good.
And Adriano has Adrian Brody.
Notice
Brody
one name that popped up
or-
multiple times.
Brody or Stan or Domingo to me.
Two names that popped up multiple times. Three names actually.
Yeah. And I'm very high on Chalamet's performance. Like, even though I didn't like the film, like I'm very high on that performance. I think
he's amazing. He's amazing.
All the best actor
Even if I didn't
nominees
like the
did
movie.
very good jobs this year.
Oh yeah, great five, honestly.
Mhm.
Yeah, what Brody does in this movie is pretty like the stuff shit he does with his eyes. I love eye acting, and that dude tells us like 100 different stories with his eyes.
I am disqualified from this conversation. Y'all can proceed.
My take is, if AI can make those eyes, then we need to get like, like
a PED. That's all I'm gonna say. It's a PED.
My argument to the AI thing is, I believe it has been confirmed that it is just for the Hungarian speaking correct that AI was used.
That is a ton of his dialogue.
If I'm just looking at his English dialogue, I would still put him in my best actor category.
Yeah, I agree
and
with
that makes that an easy thing to exclude the AI in that sense for me. Because if I was just doing it for the portion of his English performance, if we can do a best supporting actor based on a single scene, as we spoke about in, once again, a previous or future episode, depending on how I release these things, I think if we look at a lead performance and half of that lead performance, because there is some questionable stuff about the other half, that other half would still be worthy, even if we're excluding the Hungarian voiceover stuff. I think just the English side of the performance, he expresses a lot of emotion. He expresses a lot of turmoil. And I think Adrian Brody is kind of an unsung actor. I'm not a massive fan of him.
I disagree with that. You aren't like a 3 or 4 time Academy Award nominee and
it's a second nomination.
I think
third.
But
I don't care.
Unsung in a way to like the modern populace.
Yeah, that's because he only does art house though. It's not he doesn't put himself in front of a
respectable.
Everyone
knows him.
Everyone can agree that Daniel Day-Lewis is viewed as one of the greatest actors of our time, and a lot of people haven't seen anything he's done except for There Will Be Blood, because you just are told, just like Meryl Streep, someone that has been in a lot of movies that a lot of us haven't seen, us being like the mainstream. So Adrian Brody's talent has not been questioned, but I don't think he gets his accolades in the public. Like, no one gets excited Adrian Brody is cast for a film.
Absolutely.
It's like, he's one of the 18 people in the new Wes Anderson movie.
Right.
And he doesn't get that kind of accolade.
But again,
from people.
That's because of the kind of projects he chooses. I can't sit here and say that, because when you're choosing stuff that is primarily not seen by the mass populace, that is a choice.
I would say in this case, this is his first time in the limelight. Like, this is the first time that's like the leading man in some time, I would say.
Long time.
A little bit.
Yeah.
I think the only difference between like what you said.
Just want to say he tried. It was called Cadillac Records, and Beyonce sunk the film.
But it's something like you said, Matt. He does choose these smaller movies, and The Brutalist is a smaller movie. It just caught on.
It caught on because it's a $10 million budget, and you wouldn't be able to tell.
I also push back on the idea. Impressive. I push back on the idea that he's not in these mainstream films. Like, even if I'm just looking at his,
I mean, like, it's still the lead.
But like, again, like, I think that's where you can call him unsung, because unsung, I should say, because you have mainstream blockbuster style films like King Kong.
But how long ago was that?
I thought he was in that.
You are naming films that are over a decade old,
but was still, even a decade ago, was not in that conversation, and that's where the unsung thing comes. But like, people aren't often excited about the next Adrian Brody project, and like I said, I'm not a fan of his, but I think he probably deserves more.
I think he's talented.
I do want to push back on this a little bit, because right after The Pianist, he was in The Village, he was in King Kong. Hollywoodland is a film I remember got a lot of coverage. And then Cadillac Records and Splice. There was a what's that? A 7-year span there where he was well known by the populace, 8-year span, because Predators 2010. It is after Predators that he just stops and decides he's going to do these smaller projects. I can't say he's unsung because he clearly pulled himself out of this. He pulled himself out of being in the limelight. I can't. That's what I'm saying.
I also think because he's one of the youngest Oscar winners, that also played into a factor as well. Like, I know that people are like, he was undeserving of the award for the pianist. And I'm not saying that because I haven't seen it. I'm saying I've heard people say that.
I know you aren't saying it.
Yeah, that's also like a factor. Whereas like he's the youngest, but for what type of thing, and that turned people off maybe as well for him to be a likable actor, which happens a lot with these conversations too. I personally have never cared for him. I don't know why. He's just not like someone I'm excited.
It is a little bit like politics.
So
like
Nick,
it is a little bit like politics though. Like you want someone that you feel like, yeah, I'd go hang out with Adrian Brody, and most people don't feel that way.
No,
and he's just kind of a guy who's there.
I do want to say the last high-profile project he's done in the last 15 years was Winning Time on HBO. That was the last high-profile. Yes, I am so upset it never got that third season. But I know the behind the scenes and I know why.
Also, just because I mentioned him before, and I had to look it up here. No, Daniel Day-Lewis deserved the actor for the best actor of the year, the pianist one.
What's that? Dancing with Wolves.
Daniel Day-Lewis for There Will Be Blood.
That was that
Wait.
year?
That wasn't 2002.
He won for There Will Be Blood. He won for There Will Be Blood.
What am I looking at? Oh, sorry, Gangs of New York. Gangs of New York, not There Will Be Blood. Gangs.
I never saw Gangs of New York.
Oh my god, you just give me Nick. You give me a heart.
Yeah, sorry.
Give me another reason to really hate Adrian Brody. No, I'm joking.
No. Gangs of New York, and like I've seen The Pianist. Like Nicolas Cage in adaptation is very good. Jack Nicholson in About Schmidt is very good. Daniel Day-Lewis in Gangs of New York is very good. I haven't seen The Quiet American with Michael Caine, but on that list of 5, I have Adrian Brody at 4, and only because I didn't see the Michael Caine movie.
I will say Brody definitely deserved that Oscar, but it should have been Cage for adaptation. But I will say to that point, I'm never, even after this, I'm never going to see a movie because Brody's in it.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't undermine his talent.
You guys aren't me. I will literally go see a movie because of an actor being in it.
Oh,
like
John
Boyega in
one of them.
Yeah, no, I think we all agree with that. Like, I'll see certain movies because an actor's in it, and I'll begrudgingly watch movies with actors I don't like, as I just did this week.
This morning?
Tread
lightly, not today. Sorry, I was speaking about The Gorge and my dislike for Miles Teller.
Pain.
Hey,
yeah,
I'm not a fan of his either, but I love him in The Offer. Anyways, back to the
But going back to that, I think it's not an actor you get excited about, and it's not because of the quality of their work. But if Adrian Brody gets cast in the next Christopher Nolan film, like all of Hollywood, I don't care.
Yeah,
it's true.
You and I are different breeds then, because I do care about that stuff. Like, I'll be honest.
I mean, no one's denying Brody's talent, but like I see what you're saying. Like I'm not, he's not like a run to the theater kind of actor.
Yeah,
for me at least.
He's not a big name.
Yeah, I'm not excited about him like I'm excited about the next DiCaprio film or the next De Niro film and things like that. To
He's
me, it's
not
like,
a movie star. If that makes any sense.
He
doesn't have that.
He's not a movie star by choice, though, is my point. He tried for a bit, and he's like, you know what? He tried for a bit, and he's like, you know what? Fuck it. It's not meant for me to be a movie star, but I'm going to be a movie star in a different sense, in that I am gonna be in awards conversations. Whether he gets nominated or not, I remember him being in so many awards conversations for his projects over the last 10 or so years. It's just who he is. He's that kind of talent.
Here's what I'll say. I think this is the right comparison now that I think about it, especially in, like, you talk about the later years and going to kind of more independent film stuff. To me, someone who followed a very similar route until very recently is Joaquin Phoenix. Did a lot of movies that weren't big mainstream movies, and no one questions whether the fact that Joaquin Phoenix is one of the best actors of our time. And very few people, if any, are saying that about Adrian Brody. So I do think that there is a level of being unheralded there, because there's a lot of people that didn't see Come On, You Were Never Really Here, Inherent Vice, name the other Joaquin movie you can think of pre-Joker.
But there is a situation you are ignoring there, and that is his on-set behavior, which caused him to have to do small films. You cannot use that. That is apples and oranges.
No, I think that still works because
I'm talking about for Joaquin Phoenix. I'm talking about.
Yeah, pretty decent.
Joaquin Phoenix had horrible on-set behavior, which nearly got him blackballed from Hollywood. It is
he might have been blackballed again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It is an apples and oranges comparison you are working there.
I don't think so. If anything, it works more in the favor because
Joaquin had no choice. Brody made the choice. Joaquin had to earn his respect back.
Regardless of whether the choice was made or not, the populace stuck with Joaquin when he was making those films. Adrian Brody, whether he made the choice or not, he had Predators, he had Hollywoodland, he had King Kong, and the populace didn't stick with him. No one was pining for the next Adrian Brody movie, whether he's Joaquin Phoenix, who got blacklisted from Hollywood, Kevin Spacey, who got entirely blacklisted from Hollywood. Fans of their work are still going to their stuff. People just don't care about Adrian Brody, and it's nothing against the knock on the actor or the talent. He's just not someone that people get excited about.
It's true. I mean, there's also that interaction with Halle Berry that people hold over his head quite a bit. Not that I want to bring that up, but that's also a factor. I don't know.
But there's lots of stuff that people can blind an eye to. Like, we all watch Angelina Jolie make out with her brother. It was weird, but people still went and saw Tomb Raider, you know? Like, it does happen. There's weird things, whether it's like the whole separating the art from the artist thing, when you want to look at whether it's music and people like Michael Jackson and R. Kelly and Diddy and stuff like that. There's always levels that people are going to rate the outside versus the performance and the talent. And I think it's always something. I'm a big sports fan, so it's always a thing I say, not to get too dark here, but we had this thing here in Canada that there was a bunch of minor league hockey players that assaulted a girl, and they have been kicked out of the NHL, and deservedly. They did bad things, all that stuff. You never see that stuff happen to like the Connor McDavids of the world. And you got to wonder if Leo, if we're going back to movie terms, if Leo has something like that, are people going to treat him the same way they treat a Kevin Spacey film if Leo keeps doing stuff? Look at what's happening with Johnny Depp, regardless of what side you're on.
You picked a horrible comparison because people have been jumping off the Leo shit because of his dating preferences.
Yes, but they're still watching his films. And like, regardless of what side you're on, Johnny Depp, Amber Heard thing, like, people will still go if they're invested in you. And the thing is, no one is really invested in Adrian Brody. And I'm not trying to knock the guy. Like I said, it's one of the best performances of the year. But Amanda said it perfectly. He's not a movie star. He's not a superstar. He's a guy. He's a solid actor.
Like, Timothée Chalamet has more pull than he does, which is crazy right now.
Yeah.
Like, that's what it is. He's movie star. Timmy's a movie star right now. Yeah. Out of the 5, it's Timothée Chalamet that's like nominated. That's movie star.
Yes,
which is crazy because he's so young.
Coleman is on his way. When the fact that I know,
definitely.
I know people, and to be fair, Coleman's on that way because of a show I have a guilty pleasure care for, and that's Euphoria. That's what got him on a lot of people's radar. It's that show and his amazing performance, and that's. People started checking out more. I know people who have watched films like Sing Sing because of Coleman.
Yeah.
And now he's getting these larger roles, being able to do more of what he wants. He's the voice of Norman Osborn on frickin' Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. So, like...
And I mean, like, you talk about Euphoria. He got that role on Euphoria because of his role on Fear the Walking Dead, which is where a lot of people were introduced to him. So, like, he made himself undeniable, and Brody hasn't been able to do that. The talent is there, but for whatever reason, it could be the personality, it could be whatever, he hasn't made himself this undeniable star, and that time's kind of passed for him.
I feel like he doesn't want to be the undeniable star.
I feel like after this, he could have a Brody rejuvenation. like maybe for a couple years, like last time. But I feel like we're going to see an uptick in Brody, even if unless he just really wants to do these small things, which is power to him. He's making his bag. He's getting his stuff.
Or he could win and peace out.
That could also be
for another 7 years, right? Like, which the thing is that this is what I said. I said this to you. Like, he's not on a Daniel Day-Lewis level where he can put in this level of like of a performance, go into hiding, and then come back in 8 years, which is crazy. Because like when Daniel Day-Lewis has a movie, it's like, I don't care where I am. I need to go watch it, right? So it's like with him, I don't think he's at that same level, but he's kind of acting like he's on the same level sometimes. And I
think he does have that charm. He just hasn't been able to like capitalize on it, whether he's trying to or not. But he is pretty spectacular in this movie. And just a side note, he might be the coolest looking smoker maybe ever.
Yeah. That is true.
He's a dope smoker.
I'll co-sign that.
True.
I'll co-sign
I'll give that.
The way he like flicks the lighter is like, you're a fucking guy.
I want to do that. Let me learn.
Me too.
You heard it here first, guys. Adrian Brody's going to get kids into smoking.
Yes, he is. Adriano's about to start a pack a day tomorrow.
No.
If I must, that's what Laszlo would do.
No.
Well, folks, I think we covered everything that we needed to cover for this film. And I know Adriano's probably not happy that most of it was negative.
I pled my case, and I'm happy about that.
That's fair enough. But with that, folks, want to give Amanda real quick a chance to shout out her whole thing.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for ambushing my boyfriend in this recording. The look on his face was spectacular. So I was happy to be a part of that, guys. Thanks so much. You guys can always follow me over at AMX NDA Reviews on Twitter, Blue Sky, and Letterboxd. I just dropped my Captain America Brave New World review on YouTube. You can check it out at Candid Cinema and my website, candidxcinema.com.
All right. And for those two gentlemen there, you can check everything they do over on Bitesize Breakdown with all their reviews and features that go up from time to well, their reviews go up weekly, but the features from time to time. For myself, you can catch me here on A Bigger Bite and my own personal YouTube channel, Watt Real Entertainment. My Captain America review dropped, and I know it's probably been a couple weeks by now, but you can go check that out. So go ahead and do that. But with that, folks, signing off, I am Matt. That was Amanda, that's Nick, and that's Adriano, and this was A Bigger Bite. We'll see you next time. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the new episode of A Bigger Bite. Once again, I am Matt, and joining me is Bitesize founder Nick and Adriano. This is the show where we take a deeper dive into some of the biggest films of the year. But it's just not us on this episode. We have a special guest to talk about The Brutalist, and I'm so excited for this. How you doing, Amanda?
Hi! Surprise!
The look on Adriano's face.
Hi, babe.
Really? We're doing this.
Died inside as soon as he saw her on screen because
I'm happy to see her, but
no, you're not. Not the way you're talking. You're not. Our relationship shall be tested tonight, folks. We're just.
We've had enough fights about this movie already.
Oh, I know. But now it's public. That's why I say that.
It's okay. I'm excited.
I'm excited
we'll talk
too.
After.
just
I mean, you got me in trouble. Do you see what you did?
To be fair, this was all that man there. So if you have any issues, talk to.
Oh, well, I know whose idea it was, and I know she was like, "Oh, I love that," and I'm like,
"Oh yeah."
Immediate yes. It's perfect.